So another equilateral triangle. This one has kind of a base on it. And I'm going to look for, I know we have a bunch of stones along the side here. And I think one of them, actually maybe like that one back there, would have been like a pointing kind of a thing set on it. Reference some peak behind it, probably like the summer solstice rise point. But these are all parts that could have gotten moved around very easily in subsequent waves of quarry inhabitants. And I'm pretty certain now that the quarry here is the source of the stoneworks all throughout the mounds here on the southern part of MH Observatory and the northern parts, because of just a many plethora of, I guess that's redundant, but because of so many different reasons that we're discovering, it's just beyond clear that they were here quarrying and making this structure a long time ago. The more recent Nordic wave that of archaeoastronomers that I posit were here in around the 800 to 900 current era time period, would have used those stones, but just kind of reworked them to calibrate for the modern realities of a subsequent wave many millennia later, since I think probably the Bronze Age was the period before that when it was last calibrated for these stoneworks. So per all of my theses and hypotheses, there is a working effigy of stoneworks along this portion of my property that is 1,400 feet in length, and it goes and follows a parabola from the summer solstice, which I think you'd be able to see from the southern mound observatory point. You'd be able to see across from here, maybe with a pointer, if this was maybe up on the hill higher or something. I don't know. There's just so many big stones. That one back there has a hole drilled into it, smaller diameter than some of the bigger ones they used in the 50s or 60s. But from that parabola of the sunrise at summer solstice, there's a number of glacial erratics and rockworks and carvings and orientations that follow that parabola down. It's the corridor. And that goes all the way down and across Sweet Road down here, the Waterworks Road, by the, right as you descend the hill on the other side of this mound, there's a similarly equilateral triangle carved into the actual bedrock. On the east side has the Ouroboros tail, and then there's a large serpent head boulder on the west side of the road that points to it and then continues to point backwards onto our farm, where a trail of stoneworks form that same corridor of stoneworks, forming the apex of that parabola. Now, I've posited in the past that we get to this sort of in-between point, this equinox point, pretty much from the telephone pole in the back of this video on the other side of the other curb cut, and this curb cut here on the southern mound. So in that space in between, which is opposite this, well, it's a protected state forest, but once served as a quarry for the interstate material, but it wasn't much that was used. However, it became the bedrock for the system that we now have. But prior to that, I think all the material that was quarried out of here, including lots of the quartz, includes a vein that runs from White Rock Mountain right to the south of Mount Hunger, all the way down through the Hunger Ravines and across our farm, and sort of a pattern down through this area down in there, and then all the way on out further to points past our farm. But without going there, the apex of the summer solstice sunset equally comes across by glacial erratics and all sorts of stone effigy markers, or markers of stone before it hits the effigy here, and near where the dolmen is on the northern mound there, Blackjack's Domain. That's what we call it. So basically, there's a set of stoneworks from that point. Hey, don't pull. Dog is in the background getting ready to go, but from that parabola apex, it hits the stoneworks where we have the observatory just sort of in the video here, straight back past through the woods there. And then it ends. So there's an earthen mound on the far end that I'll draw, and there's also this mound from this point across, and this forms a wall along the quarry on the western front of the quarry. And so for that whole stretch, it relates to, and I know in the wintertime you can see it a little bit better, but in the back here, I'll try to zoom through, you can see the ridge line of Mount Hunger and the skyline range behind it, the Putnam Forest. That skyline ridge, that trail that goes across it, that range basically carries the equinox, I think, over a 41,000 year calendar, as far as where it rises and sets due west in the course of, the Earth's wobble and tilts and obliquity. So I think in that sense, their sense of marking the equinox center point kind of was amorphic of stonework. At least I can't find it, and it may go down under and be more definite, and I'm just searching for an explanation to a problem that doesn't exist. But on the flip side, there's also a pile of stone in here, and if we look at the other modeled UNESCO World Heritage sites that are all 1,400 feet that I posit we connect to, creating effectively a real tangible longitude and latitude in an ancient period of time, way before the 1800s, when you link us with Machu Picchu, which towards another hypothesis, and has been ground truth confirmed, runs along the magnetic north-south line of an early longitudinal meridian at 72.66 degrees west of longitude. And that line I have traced 12,235 miles of which on the LiDAR ground penetrating steep slope human intervention spectrum is 100% lemons across the board, or gold bars, or whatever the slots machine jackpot is. Like, it literally is just confirming the entire way, except for where glacial meltwaters would have blown out up in Trois Riveries, Canada, and also the Atlantic seaboard. Once this wave of archaeoastronomers that were here post glaciers, probably around 9,000 before the current era, but way before the Bronze Era, were here and carving glaciers in order to save the Americas from flooding out. So that's how we have the actual science trail of all of the glacial erratics taking a due south course from here in Vermont and heading all the way down through Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Long Island, as it does scientifically. So there's all that going on, but here's where it gets interesting. The effigy on this mount here, we've traced pretty well all the way out down to here, but then it kind of goes soft there into an earth mound. But then if we follow all this stonework through here, accepting the fact that previous logging may have blown out some of it and put it to the side of here, but maybe another theory is that wave of Nordic travelers put it here to sort of just really eyeball the whole sunset solstice rise. The sunrise solstice, summer, from this location. So they may have moved it intentionally to try to key in on that event, as opposed to this like effigy snake serpent thing. But that snake would have then come across that direction, and maybe the quarry in a latter subsequent period in the 50s moved stones, etc. And so the markers aren't exact in this position right now, but there's enough material up in here to suggest the connectivity of the stoneworks as an effigy in its entirety would have done that. And then at the end of that, it would have crossed back over onto our property. Now that's where it gets a little looser, and I'm like, but how do we connect our property from that crossover to the stoneworks for a complete stoneworks effigy of 1,400 feet? And that's where the original circle of stones, massive big boulders down here, that I keyed in on because it was all circular in shape, bespeaking sort of that kind of Druid, Nordic, Viking sense of, alignments of circles. So that's kind of stuff that I was seeing, and if we put those into the mix, and we take the ones that are all along here, and like all along here, and we just basically push them across the road. Come across. Get into here. And again, this is where I first keyed in on the stoneworks here. Let's go, ha. Good. Good. Actually, let's do this. Good boy. I'm just kind of keying on the stoneworks here. So you can see just huge boulders. And all of these massive stones are in kind of a circle, a really large circle. So I think these stones were reconfigured to signify this is the crossing of two parabola, that one marks the solstice sunrise events from winter to summer, and the other marks the sunset events from winter to summer. And where they intersect, for astronomical purposes, you have two observatory locations on each mound, and maybe a pool of water held to the west by that earthen mound. And on the east, we have this wall over here, which in the wintertime is much easier to see the elevation, but right now it's kind of hidden in the forest of green. But fundamentally, that could have been where a lot of astronomy took place. And come! And then we would have the fixer rope. We'd have all the material and the stones to effectively make a contiguous touching effigy. Yeah, I guess it would just not even be that much of a movement. It would just be like right here where this maple tree is, and where we stopped our solar and barn upgrades because we were doing all kinds of digging for underground. Even though we ran the power above ground, we kind of stopped because as we were running underground, this is where we started running into some 1700s plateware, thin glass, and unmarked bricks or unstamped bricks, and the journey of archaeology began. So in that space, you know, knowing there's all this gravel, knowing these rocks are here, this is the most likely path of the parabola connectivity of stone, which then picks up the sunrise parabola across that way and goes out that way. And in doing that, we're basically creating the two different parabola intersection points, and the road effectively does the divide and conquer of it with the pool of water kind of matching up with the fact that, like, you know, I've talked to wetlands experts on compliance for our farms master plan and all of the things that we're doing here. And, you know, when you look at the composition of this material, you know, like I said, this is all imported. It's not like it's a wetlands in the classic sense of, oh, it's a primitive state of something. Its primitive state was imported clay from Cabot, the loam, to effectively hold water to a very shallow, small pool, such that water would be allowing the reflection of stars into a surface or a continuous pool, upon which, I posit, there were things that were done to effectively change the composition of the soil to mark, once they knew scouts ran, you know, running various latitudes and longitude runs, they could plot the entirety of the atlas of our Americas here. And I think North America would have been plotted in here because of the theories that I've put forth. It's just the most efficient means to do it. But also, since I've plotted it all in Google Earth, and you look at the actual pyramids in Central America and Africa and plot them to here, to the calibrated point from the Nordic travel is the most current restoration that I've done. When you do that, it links up pretty perfectly with radians that create even degrees of separation with almost equilateral triangle to Machu Picchu to the south, due south of us here at 72.66 degrees west of longitude. And then all of the other sites of ancient civilization that exist along that meridian. That was the OG meridian. That was the OG prime meridian. So, yeah, I now understand the entirety of how this architectural layout happened. I think the supporting massive levels of volume of material in rocks and contours and topography with respect to all of the waves of subsequent human intervention and possibilities in the most traditional classic sense of archaeology are all checked in the box front, and we now know exactly what happened. So it's just reverse engineering as far as proving these theories, but 1,400 feet of an effigy, and I've pretty much located all of those feet as far as how it works. And then in addition to, for instance, the Hopewell, Ohio site and the Poverty Point site in Louisiana, I think this one, like Machu Picchu, are more observatory in their nature. And I think just like we're going to find the windows at Machu Picchu all represent different degrees and medians of cartography as well. I think the astronomy part uses the mountain peaks there just as equally. When you map it all out and you offset for the calibrated moments, you're going to find that it's exactly spot on with the latitude and longitude theory. And yeah, it's a good day. It's kind of exciting. So lots of stoneworks also baked into the old colonial rock wall that I thought for decades was just a rock wall made by colonials. And it's kind of fun. We're going to focus on this area in the next wave of restoration. So, yeah, peace.